Hello, I'm David Mello, Supervisor of Children's Services from the Fall River Public Library. And today I have some of my favorite stories to share with you. And it's my hope that by the end of our little session here now, that some of my favorite stories will become some of your favorite stories. And we're going to start out with a special friend I have over here. Would you like to meet him? Good. His name is Joseph. And as you can see, Joseph is wearing an overcoat. But it's rather a very old and shabby overcoat. You see, it's his favorite article of clothing. He wears it wherever he goes, day in and day out. And as a result, it's getting rather old and worn. And this story is called Joseph Had a Little Overcoat. My friend Joseph had this little overcoat, but from wearing it every single day, it was getting rather old and it was getting worn. He was losing buttons. There were patches all over it. The bottom was all frayed. There were strings coming off it. But that didn't stop Joseph. But one day, Joseph decided it was getting too old and too worn. So Joseph decided to turn his little overcoat into a jacket. And Joseph wore his jacket to the barn to feed the cows. Now, Joseph had this fine little jacket, but from wearing it every single day, why, his jacket was getting old and it was getting worn. So Joseph decided that he would turn that jacket into a vest. And Joseph wore his vest to his nephew's birthday party. And now Joseph had this fine little vest. But from wearing it every single day, why, this vest was getting old and it was getting worn. So Joseph decided that he would turn this vest into a scarf. And Joseph wore his scarf to shovel a path through the deep, deep snow. Now, Joseph had this fine little scarf, but you've got it. From wearing it every single day, it was getting old and it was getting worn. So Joseph decided that he would turn his scarf into a necktie. And Joseph wore his necktie to his sister's wedding. Now, Joseph had this fine little necktie, but from wearing it every single day, it was getting old, and it was getting worn, and it was getting smaller. So Joseph decided that he would turn this necktie into a neckerchief. And then Joseph drank some tea with lemon. Now, Joseph had this fine little neckerchief, but from wearing it every single day, it was getting old and it was getting worn. So Joseph decided to turn that neckerchief into, get ready for this, into a button. And Joseph used that button to hold up his trousers. Now, Joseph had a fine little button, but one day, that button popped off and rolled away. Now Joseph had nothing. Poor Joseph. But then, Joseph got an idea. He decided that he would write a story all about it, which always goes to show that you can always make something out of nothing. And like a story, you can never take that away. And that's Joseph and his little overcoat. We're going to sit Joseph right over here for our next story. Our next story is a Dr. Seuss tale called The Snitches. And I've got a Snitch right over here. We'll put him right next to Joseph. And you'll notice that this particular Snitch has a star upon his belly. Well, we're going to meet some Snitches with stars and some without. And therein lies the problem in this tale. Dr. Seuss's The Snitches. Now the star-belly Snitches had bellies with stars. The plain-belly Snitches had none upon theirs. Those stars weren't so big, they were really so small, you might think that such a thing wouldn't matter at all. But because they had stars, all the star-bellied Snitches would brag, "We're the best kind of Snitch on the beaches." With their snoots in the air, they would sniff and they'd snort. "We'll have nothing to do with the plain-bellied sort." And whenever they met some, when they were out walking, they'd hike right on past them without even talking. When the star-bellied children went out to play ball, could a plain belly get in the game? Not at all. You only could play if your bellies had stars, and the plain-bellied children had none upon theirs. When the star-bellied Snitches had Frankfurter roasts, or picnics, or parties, or marshmallow toasts, they never invited the plain-bellied Snitches. They left them out cold in the dark of the beaches. They kept them away, never let them come near, and that's how they treated them year after year. Then one day, it seems, while the plain-bellied Snitches were moping and doping along the beaches, just sitting there wishing their bellies had stars, a stranger zipped up in the strangest of cars. "My friends," he announced, in a voice clear and keen, "my name is Sylvester McMonkey McBean, and I've heard of your troubles, I've heard you're unhappy, but I can fix that. I'm the fixer-up chappie. I've come here to help you. I have what you need, and my prices are low, and I work at great speed. And my work is 100% guaranteed." Then quickly, Sylvester McMonkey McBean put together a very peculiar machine, and he said, "You want stars like a star-bellied Snitch? My friends, you can have them for $3 each. Just pay me your money and hop right aboard." So they clambered inside. Then the big machine roared, and it clunked, and it bunked, and it jerked, and it burked, and it bopped them about. But the thing really worked. When the plain-bellied Snitches pooped out, they had stars. They actually did. They had stars upon theirs. Then they yelled at the ones who had stars at the start, "We're exactly like you. You can't tell us apart. We're all just the same now, you snooty old smarties, and now we can go to your Frankfurter parties." "Good grief," groaned the ones who had stars at the first. "We're still the best Snitches, and they are the worst. But now, how in the world will we know? They all frowned. If which kind is what, or the other way round. Then up came McBean with a very sly wink, and he said, "Things are not quite as bad as you think. So you don't know who's who. That is perfectly true. But come with me, friends. Do you know what I'll do? I'll make you again the best Snitches on beaches, and all it will cost you is $10 eaches. Belly stars are no longer in style," said McBean. "What you need is a trip through my star-off machine. This wondrous contraption will take off your stars, so you won't look like Snitches who have stars upon theirs." And that handy machine worked very precisely, removed all the stars from their tummies quite nicely. Then, with snoots in the air, they paraded about, and they opened their beaks, and they let out a shout, "We know who is who! Now there isn't a doubt! The best kind of Snitches are Snitches without!" Then, of course, those with stars all got frightfully mad. To be wearing a star now was frightfully bad. Then, of course, old Sylvester McMonkey McBean invited them into his star-off machine. Then, of course, from then on, as you probably guess, things really got into a horrible mess. All the rest of that day, on those wild, screaming beaches, the fixer-up chappie kept fixing up Snitches. Off again, on again, in again, out again. Through the machines they raced round and about again, changing their stars every minute or two. They kept paying money, they kept running through, until neither the plane nor the star bellies knew whether this one was that one, or that one was this one, or which one was what one, or what one was who. Then, when every last cent of their money was spent, the fixer-up chappie packed up and he went. And he laughed as he drove in his car up the beach. They never will learn. No, you can't teach a Snitch. But McBean was quite wrong, I'm quite happy to say, that the Snitches got really quite smart on that day. The day they decided that Snitches are Snitches, and no kind of Snitch is the best on the beaches. That day, all the Snitches forgot about stars, and whether they had one or not upon theirs. And that's the Snitches by Dr. Suess. My next little story is about a turtle. And this little chap here, his name is Melvin. And we'll see what happens to Melvin in this little tale of a boy who is searching for just the right pet. It is called Melvin and the Boy. I really want a pet, but all I ever hear is, no. I asked Mom for a dog like that, but she said, too big. I asked Dad for a monkey like that, but he said, oh, too much work. I asked for a bird like that, and they both said, too noisy. Everyone else has a pet. At the park, there is a turtle staring at me. He has a fancy shell with a yellow spot on top. He's not too big, and he won't be too much work, and he's definitely not too noisy. Can I keep him? All right, dear. Mom and Dad agree. What will you name him? Melvin, I say, because Melvin is a good name for a turtle. Back home, I tried to play with Melvin, but he is hiding. I tried to share my snack, but I don't think he likes pretzels. When I take Melvin outside to meet my friends, he is shy. He doesn't even want to meet the other pets. And while I play catch, he tries to sneak away. When we go out for a walk after dinner, Melvin is very, very, very slow. I have to carry him all the way home. When I'm finished with my bath time, I give Melvin his own bath, and he finally comes out of his shell. But he hides again when Dad reads us a good night story. He doesn't want to listen. I don't think Melvin likes it here. I wonder if he misses his friends. In the morning, I tell Mom and Dad that Melvin isn't having much fun at our house. Maybe he wants to go back to the park, I say. It looks like they're going back to the park. At the park, when I set Melvin free, he goes right into the pond where two other turtles are sunbathing. They look just like Melvin. We should let him stay here, I say. But I make sure to tell Melvin I can't wait to visit him tomorrow. And that's Melvin and the boy. Have a day when absolutely nothing goes your way? Well, I have. And so has Alexander. This is Alexander and the terrible, horrible, no good, very bad day. I went to sleep with gum in my mouth, and now there's gum in my hair. And when I got out of bed this morning, I tripped on the skateboard, and by mistake, I dropped my sweater into the sink while the water was running. And I could tell that it was going to be a terrible, horrible, no good, very bad day. At breakfast, Anthony found a Corvette Stingray car kit in his breakfast cereal box. And Nick found a junior undercover agent code ring in his breakfast cereal box. But in my breakfast cereal box, all I found was breakfast cereal. I think I'll move to Australia. In the carpool, Mrs. Gibson let Becky have a seat by the window. Audrey and Elliot got seats by the window too. I said I was being scrunched. I said I was being smushed. I said, if I don't get a seat by the window, I'm going to be car sick. No one even answered. I could tell it was going to be a terrible, horrible, no good, very bad day. At school, Mrs. Dickens liked Paul's picture of the sailboat better than my picture of the invisible castle. At singing time, she said I sang too loud. At counting time, she said I left out 16. Who needs 16? I could tell it was going to be a terrible, horrible, no good, very bad day. I could tell because Paul said I wasn't his best friend anymore. He said that Philip Parker was his best friend, and that Albert Moyo was his next best friend, and that I was only his third best friend. I hope you sit on a tack, I said to Paul. I hope the next time you get a double-decker strawberry ice cream cone, the ice cream pot falls off the cone part and lands in Australia. There were 2 cupcakes in Philip Parker's lunch bag, and Albert got a Hershey bar with almonds in it, and Paul's mother gave him a piece of jelly roll that had little coconut sprinkles on top. Guess whose mother forgot to pack him dessert? It was a terrible, horrible, no good, very bad day. That's what it was. Because after school, my mom took us all to the dentist, and Dr. Fields found a cavity just in me. Come back next week, and I'll fix it, said Dr. Fields. Next week, I said, I'm going to be in Australia. On the way downstairs, the elevator door closed on my foot. And while we were waiting for my mom to get the car, Anthony made me fall where it was muddy. And then when I started crying because of the mud, Nick said that I was a crybaby. And while I was punching Nick for saying crybaby, my mom came back with the car and scolded me for being muddy and fighting. I am having a terrible, horrible, no good, very bad day, I told everybody. But nobody even answered me. So then when we went to the shoe store to buy some new sneakers, Anthony chose white ones with blue stripes. Nick chose red ones with white stripes. I chose blue ones with red stripes. But then the shoe man said, we're all out of those. They made me buy plain old white ones, but they can't make me wear them. When we picked up my dad at his office, he said I couldn't play with the copying machine, but I forgot. He also said to watch out for the books on his desk, and I was careful as I could be, except for my elbow. He also said, don't fool around with his phone, but I think I called Australia. My dad said, please don't pick him up anymore. It was a terrible, horrible, no good, very bad day. There were lima beans for dinner. I hate lima beans. There was kissing on TV. I hate kissing. My bath was too hot. I got soap in my eyes. My marble went down the drain, and I had to wear my railroad pajamas. I hate my railroad pajamas. When I went to bed, Nick took back the pillow he said I could keep, and the Mickey Mouse nightlight burned out, and I bit my tongue. The cat wants to sleep with Anthony, not with me. It has been a terrible, horrible, no good, very bad day. My mom says, some days are just like that. Even in Australia. And that's Alexander and the terrible, horrible, no good, very bad day. Now, if you enjoyed these stories that you heard today, you can find them all at the Fall River Public Library. We'll see you here.